Imagine a 20-year-old boy conquering the entire known world without ever losing a single battle in his life. His name was Alexander the Great, and his incredible story begins in the ancient kingdom of Macedonia. Born to King Philip and Queen Olympias, young Alexander grew up believing he had the blood of gods. His mother constantly whispered royal secrets in his ear, promising that destiny had chosen him for endless glory. From a very young age, Alexander showed deep curiosity and fierce ambition that shocked older palace nobles. One day, a wild and massive war horse named Bucephalus was brought before his father, terrified of everyone. While older soldiers failed to calm the beast, young Alexander noticed the horse was simply scared of shadows. He gently turned the animal toward the sun, hopped on its back, and rode across the open field. His proud father wept and declared that Macedonia was too small for a boy with such vast ambition. To sharpen his mind, Philip hired the legendary philosopher Aristotle to teach the young prince about science and logic. Aristotle gave Alexander a deep love for Greek myths, especially the heroic adventures of Achilles in the Iliad. The young prince slept every night with a sharp dagger and Homer's Iliad tucked under his pillow. When Alexander was 16, his father left him in charge of Macedonia while fighting wars far away. A nearby tribe rebelled. So young Alexander marched out, crushed the revolt, and renamed their city after himself. At age 18, he led the cavalry charge at the Battle of Chaeronea, helping his father unite Greece. But family peace shattered when King Philip took a new wife, making Alexander fear for his royal birthright. During a heated wedding argument, Alexander insulted his father and temporarily went into exile with his mother, Olympias. Soon after, King Philip was suddenly assassinated at a grand public celebration by one of his royal guards. At just 20 years old, Alexander was crowned king of Macedonia, surrounded by enemies who smelled instant weakness. Rivals inside the palace plotted against him, while conquered Greek city-states rebelled against their new young master. Instead of showing fear, Alexander marched his army swiftly to crush the rebels and secure his father's throne. He destroyed the rebellious city of Thebes so completely that the rest of Greece surrendered without another fight. With Greece firmly under his command, he turned his eyes toward the ultimate enemy, the mighty Persian Empire. He crossed the sea into Asia with 40,000 brave soldiers, carrying nothing but courage and legendary weapons. As his feet touched foreign sand, he threw his spear into the earth and claimed Asia as his prize. Before fighting, he visited the ancient ruins of Troy to honor the tomb of his hero, Achilles. The Persian governors quickly gathered their forces at the Granicus River, expecting an easy victory over the boy. Alexander charged directly across the rushing water, leading from the front lines, where the fighting was most brutal. His helmet was shattered by an enemy axe, but his loyal friend Clytus saved him at the last second. After winning his first major battle, he freed Greek cities along the coast from heavy Persian taxation. He then marched into an ancient city, where a mysterious and tangled rope knot waited in the temple. Legend said, whoever untied the tangled Gordian knot would become the supreme ruler of the entire Asian continent. Instead of wasting time pulling at ropes, Alexander drew his sharp sword and sliced the knot in half. This bold action showed the world that he would rewrite the rules of war to claim his destiny. While marching through southern Turkey, Alexander swam in an icy river and fell violently ill with a fever. Someone warned him that his doctor was bribed to poison him, but Alexander drank the medicine without hesitation. His complete trust in his loyal doctor saved his life, and he quickly recovered to lead his army. Soon the Persian king, Darius III, arrived with a massive army that heavily outnumbered the Greeks. They clashed at the Battle of Issus, where the narrow mountain field trapped the huge Persian army inside. Alexander spotted King Darius in his royal chariot and charged straight toward him through a storm of arrows. Terrified by Alexander's fierce attack, King Darius abandoned his chariot and fled the battlefield in absolute panic. The Persian king fled so quickly that he left his wife, mother, and daughters behind in the camp. Alexander treated the captured royal family with deep respect and kindness, winning the admiration of his new subjects. King Darius sent a letter offering gold and half his empire if Alexander would agree to stop fighting. Alexander rejected the offer, declaring there could only be one supreme ruler over the continent of Asia. Marching south along the coast, he reached the island city of Tyre, which refused to open its gates. Since he had no warships, Alexander ordered his soldiers to build a half-mile bridge directly across the ocean. For 7 grueling months, his men built the bridge under heavy arrow fire until they finally broke through. The fall of Tyre proved that no wall or sea could protect anyone from Alexander's incredible determination. He then marched south to Gaza, where a fortress on a high hill put up a fierce resistance. Alexander was wounded in the shoulder during the siege, but his army eventually captured the stronghold after weeks. After conquering Gaza, he marched into Egypt, where the people hated Persian rule and welcomed him warmly. The Egyptians crowned him pharaoh and celebrated him as a divine ruler sent to set their nation free. He journeyed deep into the desert to visit the famous oracle at the holy oasis of Siwa. The priests greeted him as the son of Zeus, confirming the divine destiny his mother had always promised. Before leaving Egypt, he designed a magnificent new port city by the sea and named it Alexandria. Alexandria would soon grow into the greatest center of learning and trade in the ancient Mediterranean world. But King Darius was gathering a second army, even larger than before, on the open plains of Gaugamela. Darius chose a wide and flat battlefield so his deadly chariots and war elephants could crush the Greeks. On the night before the battle, Alexander slept so deeply that his generals had to wake him up. His generals suggested a night attack, but Alexander proudly said he would never steal a victory in darkness. Using brilliant tactics, Alexander drew the Persian forces outward and opened a giant gap in their center lines. He led his elite cavalry straight through the opening, riding like a spear point toward the Persian king. Once again, Darius panicked under the pressure and ran away, sealing the fate of the Persian Empire forever. Alexander entered the golden gates of Babylon, where citizens showered his soldiers with flowers and precious gifts. He rewarded his soldiers with gold and allowed the local Babylonian people to keep their traditional customs. He then marched to Persepolis, the royal capital of Persia, and captured treasury vaults overflowing with endless gold. During a wild night of drinking, a fire broke out and burned the grand royal palace to ashes. Many believed Alexander started the fire on purpose to avenge the ancient Persian destruction of Athens centuries earlier. Wanting final closure, Alexander chased Darius into the northern mountains, only to find the king murdered by traitors. He gave his fallen rival an honorable royal burial and executed the traitors who had betrayed their king. Now officially the king of Asia, Alexander wore Persian royal clothes to unite Greek and Persian cultures together. But his traditional Greek soldiers resented these foreign customs and began questioning his loyalty to their homeland. Pushing eastward into uncharted territories, the army fought mountain warlords through harsh winters and burning desert heat. In Bactria, he fell deeply in love with a beautiful noblewoman named Roxana and married her immediately. This marriage helped secure peace in the eastern provinces, but it angered his traditional Macedonian army leaders. The constant warfare and pressure began taking a dark toll on Alexander's mental health and trusting nature. He grew paranoid about assassination plots and executed several loyal officers, including his closest veteran general, Parmenion. During a drunken argument, he angrily threw a spear at Clytus, the friend who once saved his life. As Clytus died in his arms, Alexander wept uncontrollably and locked himself away in his tent for days. Despite the grief and internal struggle, his unstoppable hunger for exploration pushed the army further toward India. Crossing the snowy Hindu Kush mountains, his soldiers suffered from biting cold and dangerous rocky cliff trails. In India, he encountered a terrifying new challenge when King Porus brought 200 war elephants to battle. At the Battle of the Hydaspes River, thunder roared, and heavy monsoon rains turned the ground into mud. The Greek horses were terrified of the giant elephants, but Alexander's clever tactics won the bloody struggle. Deeply impressed by the bravery of King Porus, Alexander returned his kingdom and made him a trusted ally. But the battle cost Alexander dearly when his beloved warhorse Bucephalus died of old age and battle wounds. In honor of his faithful companion, he founded a brand new city and named it Bucephala. Alexander wanted to march even further east toward the ocean, believing it was the edge of the world. But after 8 years of continuous fighting and 70 days of monsoon rains, his soldiers finally broke down. At the Hyphasis River, the weary soldiers mutinied and begged their king to let them return home. Alexander was furious and hid in his tent, but finally realized he could not force them to go. Reluctantly, he agreed to turn back, marking the first time his ambitions were stopped by his own men. On the journey back, Alexander risked his life by leaping alone over an enemy wall during a siege. An arrow punctured his lung, and he nearly died before his soldiers broke through to rescue him. His men wept with relief when they saw him wave his hand after surviving the dangerous surgery. To return home, he led part of his army through the scorching and deadly Gadrosian desert. When soldiers offered him a small helmet of water, he poured it out so he could share their thirst. Thousands of soldiers died of thirst and heat before the survivors finally reached the safety of Persia. Back in the capital, Alexander organized a mass wedding to unite 80 Greek officers with Persian noble women. He dreamed of creating a united empire where different races lived together in peace and mutual respect. Soon after, tragedy struck when his dearest childhood friend and closest confidant, Hephaestion, died of a sudden fever. Alexander was heartbroken, ordering days of mourning across the entire empire and building a massive funeral monument. Returning to Babylon, he began planning new naval expeditions to explore Arabia and the coasts of Africa. He ordered his engineers to build a new harbor and prepare a fleet for his next great campaign. But fate had other plans for the undefeated conqueror who had spent his youth chasing eternal glory. During a late-night feast in Babylon, Alexander suddenly collapsed with a violent fever and severe bodily weakness. Rumors spread that he was poisoned by rivals, but modern doctors believe he caught malaria or typhoid fever. For 12 days, the young king burned with fever while his soldiers lined up to say goodbye. Weak and barely able to speak, he acknowledged his weeping soldiers with a slight nod of his head. When his generals asked who should inherit his massive empire, he whispered his final words, "To the strongest." At just 32 years old, Alexander the Great died, leaving behind the largest empire the world had seen. Without a strong heir, his generals soon fought each other and divided his magnificent empire into separate kingdoms. Yet his incredible legacy lived on, spreading Greek language, art, and ideas across 3 vast continents. From Alexandria in Egypt to cities in India, his conquests connected ancient cultures like never before. He founded more than 20 new cities, creating vibrant trade routes that linked Europe and Asia together forever. Greek architecture, philosophy, and democracy influenced Eastern civilizations, creating a rich new blend called the Hellenistic Age. For centuries after his death, kings and generals traveled to Alexandria to stare at his golden glass coffin. Famous leaders like Julius Caesar and Napoleon Bonaparte studied his battles and dreamed of matching his greatness. Julius Caesar once wept at Alexander's statue because Caesar had achieved comparatively little by the exact same age. Even today, Military academies around the world teach his battlefield strategies and his fearless frontline leadership style. He showed that a commander who shares danger with his troops can earn unbreakable loyalty and eternal devotion. His story teaches us how boundless ambition can build an empire, but can also destroy the conqueror. In just 12 short years, he changed the map of the world and became a legend forever. This was Alexander the Great, the boy king who dared to conquer the earth and achieved immortality.